Hey there guys, it's Metro, and today we're taking a look at the Blood Death Knight changes on the Battle for Azeroth Alpha. And I made a video on this about a month ago. Since then there's been, I think, about 4 builds that have made some small changes, but nothing too crazy in any one build, so I figured I might as well wait a bit to kind of do like a whole video on this topic. So down below is going to be a link to all the different builds. You'll be able to find the Blood Death Knight changes on there. We'll talk a little bit about them and kind of tell you guys where we're at in comparison to Legion. So if you haven't seen the first video, I definitely recommend starting there, because that is obviously a lot changed from Legion to BFA, and now this is what's changed since then to today. So the first build was, I guess, about 3.5 weeks ago, right after I made the video actually came out. And the only real change that happened during that was Gorfine's Grasp getting nerfed. So now it's all enemies within 15 yards. Currently in Legion, it's 20 yards. It's a pretty big nerf. It was nerfed to this in, I think it was 7.0. I can't remember. At some point during Legion, it was nerfed and then buffed again back to 20 yards, if I remember correctly. But I can't recall, because I know in WoD it was super overpowered and every Death Knight had access to it. So we were just gripping things all over the place. I think it might have been 30 yards in WoD. I can't remember. But anyway, that's a pretty big nerf, but of course doesn't really affect our playstyle. And then the other big change that build was they removed the Reap Magic spell. I can't actually recall what it was called back then. It wasn't called Reap Magic, but it is back now, so spoiler alert. It was removed. At the time, it was stealing a beneficial magic effect from the target. The effect can last 2 minutes total, and activating the spell again will transfer the effect to a friendly target. This was discussed in a dev post a while back, so I was pretty excited to get this spell, and then only to have it removed, I was like, obviously they weren't satisfied with the way it was working. So anyway, that was that build, and then about a week later, we got another build where, actually that was the build that Discipline Priest got all those crazy buffs, so it kind of overshadowed the Blood Death Knight stuff, but there was really only one change, and it was a actual buff to the active mitigation of Marrow N. So Marrow N still works the exact same way. On BFA, we already talked about this in the previous video, but now it increases your armor based on a percentage of your strength. Okay, so of course increases your armor is the big change, but percentage of your strength is the thing to be considering here. It still increases your haste by 10%, no change there, but now it increases your strength by percentage of your strength from 60% up from 50. So in the previous build it was 50. A lot of people were saying, Blood Death Knight, pretty weak mitigation without some of the things that they have in Legion. Obviously there's a lot of work to still do on these classes, so you never know. But yeah, Marrow N, now that's going to really add up, let's put it that way, because you're going to get a lot of strength throughout the course of this expansion. So yeah, if you continue to prioritize strength like many people have been doing in Legion, then you're going to get it's going to pay dividends on this this little nerf here, or this little buff here. So that was the second build. Then the third build was probably the most substantial one. Really, it was a big aura rework for Blood Death Knight, like how their passive scaling works. They nerfed some spells. It's kind of complicated. I'd recommend just taking a look at the Wowhead link down below. But anyway, they nerfed Blood Boil to do from 50% of attack power to 30% of attack power shadow damage. So it's like a relative nerf, but then they buff everything else. So they made the basically the aura that makes us do damage has been, like, the knob has been turned from 15 to 29% on all of the spells, literally every spell, I think. So we just got like I don't know, I'm not a mathematician here, but I'm pretty sure we just got a pretty sizable DPS increase across the board. I don't know how much that factors into it, but the real big change that build was Mastery was massively buffed. So now the Mastery is, each time you heal yourself from Death Strike, with Death Strike, you gain previously 3% of the amount healed as physical damage. Now it's 12% of the base amount as physical damage, absorption shield. And it also increases your attack power. Previously was 2%, now it's 8%. So those are pretty big buffs to Mastery, a stat which is universally panned in Legion, to the point that people would say it is just objectively worse than Versatility. So hopefully those days will be over for Mastery. Obviously, if you played Blood Death Knight in WoD, you know all about how strong Mastery was, and that was a really overpowered time for them. So I'm not necessarily looking to go back to that, but it would be nice to have more Blood Shield absorption. So anyway, the most recent build, which was last Wednesday or Tuesday or something like that, I didn't really do much for Blood Death Knight, but it did add the Azurite armor, which we're going to talk about. And then also the two small changes. One was that Reap Magic returned, so it's back in the game now. Of course, that's not what it was called in the past, but it is a spell that has been returned to the game. And now, instead of what it did prior, like we talked about a few minutes ago, now it reaps one beneficial magic effect from the target, removing it and granting you 25 runic power. But it does cost, it just has a 10-second CD. That's right. It doesn't actually cost anything. So it has a 10-second CD, so you can't spam it. The previous iteration, you were able to spam it, and you'd be getting all these crazy overpowered buffs. So this is definitely, I mean, it's not really a nerf because the spell never really existed in the first place, but it's definitely a redesign of the spell. Obviously I prefer the overpowered version more. This version seems alright, but it's definitely not as strong as the previous one. Although it is nice to be able to steal these, to purge. Basically, this is a purge. So instead of a spell steal, we've been given a purge. And you can't really complain about that. Blood Death Knight already has so much utility, it doesn't really need any more. I don't know. But anyway, Raise Ally. Now, this was something that's kind of changed across the board for a lot of classes and specs. But Raise Ally now costs 30 runic power. Does the exact same thing. Like re-enter the battle with 60 to 20% mana, although 60% health to 20% mana. Now I don't know if that's different from Legion. I think when I battle res people, they come up with 100% health, so I think that's different from Legion too. But regardless, it now costs 30 runic power, which is a pretty big slide there. I don't. It's gonna be interesting. But anyway, so those changes all accumulate to make, in my opinion, Blood Death Knight just stronger. I don't like, from the previous alpha build, I feel much stronger. I do more damage. I do more healing because I'm doing more damage. I'm also getting larger shields and doing more damage thanks to mastery. And I now have a purge, which I didn't have, for the last month. So it's interesting. I wish it wasn't a purge. I do wish it went back to the previous way it was, a spell steal. I think Dark Simulacrum was an intangible way to identify Death Knights from other classes. It was a very unique thing. And I understand that Blizzard is still shy after how ridiculously broken it was in WoD challenge modes. But by the time this is out, that's going to be like 4 years ago. You know what I mean? I think we can get over it. I wouldn't mind seeing that come back, just because it does feel like a Death Knight stealing the spell of another class is pretty normal. But anyway, the other thing that I want to talk about here is the Azurite Traits. Very, very, very basic ones for Blood. We won't talk about anything about the gear. That's a whole nother discussion. But there are two that are testable currently. I guess, I don't know, I've only seen one. One's called Deep Cuts. That's the one I've been using on my new Death Knight that I made. Hopefully you guys watched that stream where we did the Voldun quest. It was actually quite fun. And the Deep Cuts ability was actually quite powerful. I tested it multiple times. Hard Strike deals an additional 77 damage when hitting 3 or more targets and heals you for a percentage of the damage done. So it's actually pretty good considering it's now don't forget, these ones that we're testing right now, these are for level 110s. Now there's going to be much stronger ones for level 120s, and they've actually said a couple things about it. One, it is going to be spec specific, not class specific. So the way that we're describing it now is how it's going to be, but it's actually going to be respecable. They're not sure how often they're going to allow us to respec it. And it's going to drop, raids are going to drop ones that are only available from raids. So, yeah, they removed tier sets, quote unquote, but they kind of just, I don't know, it's a whole messy situation, but I actually quite like it. I really feel like this is basically the answer to legendaries being ridiculous. We don't know how often we're going to get this gear, how frequently we'll get different pieces. Like if, the piece from this one dungeon always gives this trait. We don't know that yet. But the other one, the other option, which actually sounds way cooler and I would like to get and try on the alpha here, Bone Spike Graveyard. Casting Death and Decay impales enemies with bone spikes, inflicting 47 physical damage and healing you for 125 per enemy. So that is really cool. That's way better than Deep Cuts. Just way better. The difference is obviously you can't use it as often as Hard Strike. Like Hard Strike would probably do more damage and heal you more if you were set up to use it properly. But when you're leveling, it's not very something that you could use frequently. So those are the two currently for Blood Death Knight. Once again, only for 110. There's going to be very, apparently more complicated, more specific ones at 120. We don't know anything really about this system other than what we've been told with this media dump. So the other thing that I want to bring up is I just want to reiterate that these two talents have not changed. Nothing else about the talents has changed, but I do want to just show you that Red Thirst still does not work, and I'm not really sure what to do about that. There's nothing to do about that, obviously, but Red Thirst in the last the last video I made, I showed that Red Thirst was nerfed, substantially nerfed. Now down to 1 second remaining on Vampiric Blood removed per 10 runic power. And as you're going to see here, just look over here on the right when I use Vamp Blood, 1 minute 30 seconds when I'm using tons of runic power and it's not taking any time off. So yeah, it doesn't work still. I don't know why. I'm not sure why. And Spectral Deflection is not different or not in the game. I don't know yet. It's still New York Institute or whatever NW or NYI stands for. But yeah, so Red Thirst is, if you guys follow the channel, you know Red Thirst is the reason Blood Death Knight is strong in Legion. If it wasn't for Red Thirst, they would not be anywhere near as strong as they are. But that kind of synergizes with the artifact. So now without Red Thirst, I still feel very strong actually doing 5-mans. But of course I'm doing 5-mans that are trivially tuned, normal only, stuff like that. So I've gotten by without Red Thirst. Ironically, I haven't even taken a different spell just because I keep expecting it to work. But yeah, these 2 spells are absolutely terrible. I mean, frankly, probably the worst talents on any tank tree. So I'd just rather go without a talent. So anyway, that's it. So if you guys have any questions or anything you want to comment on, let me know. If you know something I missed, keep that to yourself. Don't embarrass me. No, I'm just kidding. Let me know. And that's everything. So we'll see you guys in the next build. Hopefully I'm going to try to keep up with this from now on. If there's sizable Blood Death Knight changes, I'll make a patch, or I'll make a video on the patch. If not, we'll wait. I do want to try to cover only Blood Death Knight from here on out. I quite like some of the other specs, but I know a lot of you guys come here only for Blood Death Knight, so that's what we're going to try to do. So anyway, if you guys have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and see you guys in the next video.